right, Shanae. We'll talk later.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Save Continue podcast. My name is Shanae Howard, and with me is Tommy Shelby.
Hello.
And Ryan the Rat Robinson. Every week we get together and talk about video games and video game related stuff.
That's true.
Yeah, it's been a week since we did our last episode.
Yeah.
That's why
I've completed Max Payne since then.
Yeah.
I just happen to be wearing the same clothes if you're watching us.
I don't change my clothes because I don't bathe, because fuck that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, efficiency.
I don't adhere to social norms.
Yeah, efficiency.
Sure.
So, how are you guys?
Excellent.
Not so bad.
Do y'all have any video
That'd be a lot better if there's a bottle opener.
Do you guys have any video game related news that you would like to share?
News? I mean, at this point, by the time this airs, it's been several weeks. But, Jason Schreier broke the whole BioWare story, and I found that to be very, very interesting.
The BioWare magic.
So, yeah, for those that don't know, Jason Schreier, who is, in tight with a lot of industry insiders.
Well-renowned journalist.
Yeah, he broke a story on BioWare and the development of Anthem and how quickly that game came together and how it wasn't the original vision.
Yeah.
And,
that whole game got...
how teams get shifted around.
18 months.
Oh, damn.
And it's just kind of sad to hear. A lot of people discouraged. A lot of people left BioWare over it. And it sounds like they've been doing things this way for quite some time.
Yeah. From what I understand, the philosophy at BioWare is they do they do that crunch, and then they say at the end the BioWare magic will kick in, and we're gonna make something.
Well, BioWare magic
special.
has become an industry term over the past few years.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because BioWare kind of responded to this article, I think probably before they read the article,
Right.
in a very standoffish, negative way.
Well, it was super reactionary.
Well, it wasn't reactionary because I don't think they actually read it before.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's it was a very knee-jerk response.
Yeah.
To hearing about it, not actually seeing it.
And then after reading it and hearing responses from their employees and people employed by other developers, they came out with another response, and it, some people have been thanking Schreier for the article, saying that it does seem that BioWare wants to change the way that they operate, and some people have since left BioWare over that article. Either
Do you
way,
think over just that article?
Well, no, but it certainly didn't help.
No.
I'll say this: I love Jason Schreier. I know a lot of people dislike the guy. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the most recent episode of the Kotaku Split Screen podcast, he goes more in depth on all this stuff.
Well, it's funny because I think a long time ago, when we first started doing the show, one of the conversations that we had was, what is video game journalism?
Yes.
And
Jason, he's one of the last.
He's one of the few video game journalists that exists.
Yeah. As far as checking sources, investigating stories, things of that nature, and writing truth, whether it's nice or not.
Yeah.
Rather than just up pieces or fan service.
I mean, Kotaku, you can go on Kotaku and find lists and things like that,
Yeah.
But yeah, Schreier in particular is just he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're not necessarily playing but you're excited about?
I'm excited about Mortal Kombat. Ryan and I have talked about it.
It's a week away,
I'm
dude.
worried about it, but I am excited for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still debating on whether I should get Sekiro.
Yeah. And then Marble It Up. If nobody's played that, it's fucking awesome. If you're into any of the old school Marble Blast Ultra games or even things like Rock of Ages or Monkey Ball, Marble It Up is fantastic, and it's made by some of the same people that made the Marble Blast games.
What about you, Ryan? Anything you're excited about, or are you just kind of focusing on your backlog?
So, I kind of a little. I don't know. It's a little of both, right? Because I've one of the pleasures that I had always derived for as long as I was earning my own paycheck, was the simple pleasure of purchasing video games. but I've now found like a sort of I'm finding a new joy in the act of working through what I have, and like because I have games in my library that I've never touched.
Yeah.
And
I feel like most of us do.
yeah, and so like I'm at the point where it's like I keep buying these video games and I don't touch them, or I play them for a little bit. And I'm finally actually like getting through the video games. I think that's why I started like playing. I started putting more time into Far Cry 5. And there's some other games that are in my library that I'm like every time and this makes me think of you, Tom, because every time I go into my library,
Yeah.
and purchase games, I see Tearaway.
Yeah.
I have literally never played Tearaway.
It's a great game.
I played Tearaway for like you handed me your Vita for a second. I played it, but that I don't really think that counts. And I see it and I'm like, I really gotta get it. In fact, I played Knack before I played Tearaway.
That's a damn shame.
I
beat Knack.
I will say this.
That's a damn shame.
Knack is not
A good game.
It's
I did
not
not beat it, but I did play it.
But I also
love Mark Cerny. Stick to hardware.
I think that while Knack is not a great game, I do think that there's a lot of hyperbole around Knack.
I disagree.
Maybe I'll be the.
That game is baby mode through and through. Well,
Oh,
no,
100%.
Knack is a hard game.
I don't want to say baby mode.
Yeah,
because
Knack's a hard game.
I think because I was actually I had another thought about like using
It's a simple game.
I had a thought about using terms like that to describe like playing games a certain way or playing games of that are of a certain difficulty, and I think that's kind of dismissive, but I don't know. I played Knack and I was like, this game seems easy enough, but I was also not very entertained.
Yeah, and it's not easy. Like Knack gets difficult.
Does it?
Yeah, but like it's not good.
Yeah.
Cerny's a genius, but he needs to stick to hardware.
Yeah. I think there's another Knack coming though.
I doubt it.
I feel like Knack is one of those games that like teaches you controls, but it's not good gameplay.
Also,
You know what I mean? Like when the games first come out, and it's like, this is how you use the system you just bought.
Yeah, but everybody knows how to use. Like we knew how to use the PS4 when it came out. It wasn't some mystery.
Well, not all of us did. Not all of us. Not all of it. The PS4 was somebody's first console.
Yeah.
Sure, but like you brought up Tearaway, right?
Yeah.
Tearaway uses every function on the Vita.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
In smart, entertaining, and fun ways.
Sure.
Knack does not do that.
Mostly,
it doesn't use every function on the PS4, and the ones it does use, it uses in terrible ways. I'll go as far as to say Tearaway is Media Molecule's best game, even more so than Little Big Planet. Little Big Planet's awesome if you want to play user-created content, but as far as the core game,
right,
Tearaway's a far better game.
But all right, compared to Tearaway, I've never played it, so I can't say like personally on that front. But as far as Knack goes, anecdotally, my experience is the people who like spoke highly of it were normally between 8 and 12 years old.
I could not imagine beating Knack at 8 years old.
Nor could I. I can imagine.
And I'm the only one at this table who has played that game to completion.
Yeah, that is correct. I have played it, but not to completion.
There is there's a game that also makes me think of Tom every time I see it, but I only ever remember it when I see it. Or I only ever think of it when I see it. Because, Tom, you have been excited about Days Gone for a while.
Yeah.
We've played... No, we played State of Decay.
Yeah, you haven't played Days Gone.
Yeah, Days Gone hasn't been released yet. It's coming out this month. I think it's coming out on the 26th.
It feels so long ago that we went to...
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, because
theater to watch.
Well, also like they
that was the second PlayStation experience.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is, man. Because like when I think about Days Gone and what I know that game has in it, like it sounds like it checks off a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like it's never like. It's not present in my mind very often.
Well, it's funny. Advertising for Days Gone hasn't been great, right? And it doesn't seem to be on a lot of people's radar, like just in the general gaming population, right? Not a lot of people are talking about it, and it's so close to release.
Right.
And that could have a lot to do with a lot of things. It could be the fact that Mortal Kombat's coming out very soon. It could be the fact that Bend hasn't put out a game since Golden Abyss.
Right.
Whatever it might be, or that the people are tired of zombies.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not.
But like... Bend is a great studio. They put out some really good games.
Right.
And I have not played a game like this. Like if you listen to preview coverage for this
Right.
game, that's all very positive.
Right.
You know, so people who have actually played the game seem to be enjoying themselves.
Yeah, but it's like getting you to play it because like
They don't have to do anything. Their pedigree gets me to play it.
Right.
You know,
maybe not the average uninformed consumer.
sure.
Well, I think the average uninformed consumer is less concerned about who made the game and whether or not the game looks fun.
Right. And
Well,
Days Gone, Days Gone will sell worse than Spider-Man did. It will sell worse than Uncharted did. Like, I don't think Sony's expecting more,
Yeah.
you know.
What were you saying, Shannon?
Oh, I was just saying like it is like watching it as like compared to you guys.
Sure.
I am an uninformed consumer. Y'all are way more I don't want to say intelligent, but it's the only word I can think of right now. I guess like
Informed.
informed.
You don't need to be a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Like
You know what the thesaurus is? It's
yes.
a dinosaur.
That's right.
So like I like what I like and I only really look at that. Because of this podcast, I look at more stuff and I vary my knowledge more because I do want to because it is interesting. Once I actually like sit down and research stuff, it is a lot more interesting. And like hearing you guys talk about it and your passion for it really makes me want to look up more stuff. But before just like talking about before I saw like I met you guys, would I have probably watched a Days Gone trailer or even known about it? Probably not.
Yeah.
It is at the big like conferences, like there's videos for it.
I think at this point, like you would know about it by virtue of owning a PlayStation.
And there are things that make me think it's more mainstream.
Right.
Because like I've had people come up to me at work who just typically play whatever's most popular and ask me if I'm excited for Days Gone.
Yeah, and
You know?
again, I think that Days Gone, like when I like on paper, that game ticks a lot of boxes for me, and it sounds like exactly the kind of game I'm into. But for some reason, like I don't think of it very often. I don't feel.
Well, it's hard to when
So-
you don't see a commercial every time you're watching a YouTube video for it, right? Which you probably did for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different beast.
Well, Spider-Man has the advantage of being in the Spider-Verse and having Spider-Man attached to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
And
like,
having that Marvel money attached to it.
yeah. So like I do feel like that's a pretty unfair comparison.
Sure, but even like Uncharted, right? And that is the same comparison, first party studio.
Yeah,
You know?
but it's Uncharted. But then you have to compare it to Uncharted 1
Well, I don't know.
versus-
Nathan Drake did a Subway commercial.
versus like Days Gone.
Sure, but
Because
like
people know the series now.
yeah, but Ben Studio made a better Uncharted game than Naughty Dog did with Uncharted 1.
Agreed.
You know, Golden Abyss is better than Drake's Fortune,
Agreed.
But if people haven't played Golden Abyss,
which very few people did.
Yeah.
then they don't know that.
Sure.
Yeah,
You're not
sure.
wrong. You're not wrong.
I think that
Like as far as Days Gone, but as far as like uninformed consumer,
Yeah.
like even though I'm more informed than a lot of other people, like Days Gone, all the videos look interesting in the fact that it's like a mass amount of enemies and a mass amount of zombies.
well, that's one of the more
But-
interesting aspects of the game. I
but
think.
it's not
Like,
enough to drive me
Well,
to want it.
It's funny because
Yeah.
I think that the lack of Days Gone's lack of presence in my mind is ironic to me because I've often lamented on the absence of interesting mechanics in modern day video games, and Days Gone has arguably one of the most interesting mechanics that I've ever seen.
If you think about it, yes, but they don't market it towards that interesting mechanic.
Well, and they shouldn't. I think the biggest problem with Days Gone is its release date. If Days Gone was a game that was coming out 2 years ago, I think everybody would be talking about it because Sons of Anarchy was a lot bigger, and because The Walking Dead was a lot bigger.
Right.
You know, games take a long time to make.
Yeah.
We talk about Borderlands having outdated memes, right?
Yeah.
And that's a product of years of development.
Right.
and this
You know,
conversation
when
ties into the topic I want to talk about. But yeah,
yeah, when development on Days Gone began, that's a goldmine idea.
Sure.
You know, people loved Sons of Anarchy. I didn't, but people did generally, right?
Yeah.
Walking Dead, same thing.
Right.
This would have sold to all of them.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Sure.
You know.
Well, and I like someone asked me for the elevator pitch for Days Gone more recently.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jax Teller kills zombies.
I don't know who that is.
Jax Teller is the primary and protagonist of Sons of Anarchy.
I know Peg.
She's on there.
Yeah. And Hellboy.
Hellboy is also on there.
No, I think I do feel like
no Peg.
I do feel like you're pretty accurate. And this came out 2 years ago. I'd probably be a lot more hype about it.
Well, I don't know that necessarily any of us would be more hyped on it, but like
I definitely would.
Well,
be.
more people would
well,
be. Though,
Tom,
you know?
Because I was like pretty excited when I first saw it. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Like we all went to the theater together.
Right.
That's not when it was debuted, but yeah.
Well, that's when she first saw it.
Yes. Thank you.
No, I'm telling you, it was not at that Sony presentation.
Is that when? That's not when she first saw it.
No, that was at the 2017 E3 press conference. It was the end caps.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay. I feel like you're definitely right about that.
I am right. I'm sorry, but I am.
No.
It was the same one where it was when God of War got shown and all that.
It's now that yeah, and the late yes
Yeah.
now they
2016 maybe. I don't know. Either way, it wasn't at PlayStation Experience.
Sure.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right about that. Now that you like bring it up, like you're totally right.
Spider-Man got announced at that.
Maybe you're thinking
And
of
I
Spider-Man.
wasn't
Experience.
excited about that.
God, that game would turn out so good.
Yeah, I mean, like no. As personally, like
Yeah.
overall, I can recognize a game is good when it is good.
Game recognized game.
Game recognized game.
Yeah.
Correct. But as far as like closest to uninformed consumer on
Sure.
this like trio of people.
You're not though. You're more like you are more informed than we are in the way that you.
I think
you're getting this information.
you're selling yourself
more like the average man.
You're selling yourself short. I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying like as like comparable. Like y'all are a lot more
Well,
knowledgeable than I am.
I think Tom and I like labor over the minutia of a lot of this stuff that even a lot of people who would call themselves enthusiasts wouldn't.
I think you're more apt to predict the way a game will perform because of the fact that you are not digging deep into this stuff. You know,
You got your finger on the pulse.
I mean, I wasn't excited about Spider-Man, but I did think it was gonna do well.
of course. Yeah.
But I do think you're accurate. The first time I saw Days Gone, and if it had been like, oh, we're announcing this today,
Right.
I would be more apt to play it than whenever it releases.
Right.
Sure.
Tom, where does I just curious, where exactly does your enthusiasm for Days Gone come from?
I mean, from Bend as a studio,
Right.
and just the game itself, because it doesn't seem like so many people when that trailer launched are like, oh, it's Last of Us or copying Last of Us. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Because it's post-apocalyptic. Like 50% of games are post-apocalyptic. You
Also,
know,
like zombies, that's not
yeah,
uncommon.
it's open world. Last of Us is an open world.
Right.
You know, you're setting traps and shit. You don't do that shit in The Last of Us.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
The only factor is the art style could be viewed as similar, not the color scheme.
No, actually,
but
I
the
do think
actual
that,
art
I do
style.
feel like that color palette is kind of similar, but
It's similar, but
I
like,
feel like
but
Last
not-
of Us
but
is
like
a lot
models
darker.
in general. Like if you study the models of both games, they're completely different.
right.
If you put whatever Days Gone man was next to Joel and Ellie, he'd stick out like a sore thumb. You know, it's I don't
Deacon
know.
St. Cloud.
And then like the reveal of that game, was the trailer, the story trailer, right? And it was the end cap in the same presentation when we actually saw gameplay.
Right.
And what we saw throughout that entire E3 was live gameplay.
Right.
So that's impressive for one, because we've seen how that goes wrong. Even with Sony first party, we've seen how that goes wrong. The first time we saw gameplay of Uncharted, they had to restart it.
Right.
Right. Whereas here you're seeing a new style of gameplay. I've not seen enemies move that way. And if you look at the zombies in those hordes, right?
Freakers, please.
Yeah, if you look at the way that they are moving, it's individual AI. It's not a group AI.
And again, that's what I'm talking. Like when I talk about, like I've talked many times about how I want games to do more interesting things and not just look better.
Right.
And that in and of itself, like independent of everything else that the game is doing, that in and of itself is probably the most interesting or compelling thing.
And that's the whole thing, right? Like you're setting a
recently.
trap, right? So like the horde's moving through an area that you've funneled them through, right?
Right.
But it's individual and AI, and that like maybe that whole horde's running through, but like
But,
you'll see one just
like,
go off to the side.
Well, like it's
you know?
interesting to think about that many enemies on screen making an individual decisions, like
Right.
individual logic checks for each one.
Right.
But the thing
Which
is,
is
you
really
have to
cool.
think about it. Like that's the thing. Like you have to think about it. It can't just be like base like consumer. Like, oh, I'm seeing this. All right, this is what this means. Cool. They're not gonna like most people aren't gonna ruminate on it. They're just gonna like take it at face value.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that if you're doing it right, then no one's thinking about it.
Well, you see things right, like
I can see that.
we've seen things like Earth Defense Force or any Musou game for many years now have a
Right.
ton of enemies on screen with individual AI. That typically works pretty well, but those also look far like inferior visually to this game.
They're doing like they're more simplified.
Right,
too.
and then you see things like Insect Armageddon or Iron Rain recently came out, and like, okay, that's EDF. It's not by the same studio, but it's EDF. But like, while those are the best looking EDF games, there's nowhere near as
Right.
many characters on screen.
right.
You know,
So I guess I'm just gonna let this like conversation like morph into that. But like as far as what I wanted to talk to you about like this week is enemies.
Right.
And like some I have like tinfoil hat theories. Like I don't have any proof of this. No one's ever like said it that I've like read as far as an interview.
give it to me.
Yeah. I wanna
But
hear it.
like, you know, like a lot of Muso games that do like super well that I have noticed in my experience tend to be ones where people like where the enemies are in tech or in armor where you can't even see like an actual person in it.
I feel like Dynasty Wars is the only Musou that does super well.
It's the one that everybody knows.
I've played a couple.
But like,
other
think of the other ones, right? Even like the bigger one, like Hyrule Warriors,
Sure.
or your
Well, even that's just an offshoot of Dynasty Warriors.
right, or Berserk, or whatever it may be. Like, those
So-
didn't do super
Did
well.
did
So, like, I
Koei
guess, like-
Tecmo make Berserk? Just
I believe so.
okay.
It seems to me that like there is definitely trends as far as like what enemies do well.
Right.
Okay.
And with Musos, it tends to be characters that don't have an actual person that you're fighting against. Like it's like a suit of armor, or they're in a mech suit, or like it's really hard to distinguish that it's an actual person in there.
Right.
I mean, I
Days-
don't know enough about that genre.
Yeah,
I will say
so, like,
this. I'm sorry, because this because Sinead, the top when you originally pitched the topic, I was having I'll admittedly I was having a hard time visualizing like any like as you put it, anecdotal examples of enemies or whatever.
opinion about trends
So,
and villain
now,
and enemies.
The interesting thing about Musos, not Musos in general, but specifically Dynasty Warriors, is that many times the more significant enemies, the named enemies, are also characters that you can play as at some point. Now I remember, and this has been true for every Dynasty Warriors game that I've played, is that it was always a big deal when you got the notification that Lu Bu entered the battlefield, because he's the badass of Dynasty Warriors, right? And he's going to just like wreck shop, and with Muso's like, and I guess like, oops, you got it.
That'd have been so fucking funny.
That was about to be a bad night for you.
Yeah.
But like with like in practically speaking, like in Muso's, like you're just wave after wave of anonymous faceless dudes, right? But enemies or named enemies are more striking in Muso's, or specifically Dynasty Warriors again, because they are visually distinct. They do have distinct fighting styles. They do have distinct weapons.
And I feel like that's the same in almost all Musous outside of Dynasty Warriors.
And I couldn't say, I haven't played enough of them.
And neither
to
have
say,
I, but like if you think about Hyrule Warriors,
it's
or if you
probably-
think about like,
yeah,
Berserk, right? Like Guts is a lot cooler to fight than a bunch of random soldiers.
Sure.
Or not Guts, Griffith is a lot cooler to fight than a bunch of random soldiers.
Yeah. So like as far as like what as like to generally steer the topic towards like what kind of like I'm pointing at is like like it is easier. It's a trend in Musos to not have like your nameless hordes of enemy to like look like humans.
Yeah.
I think that they do that for the ratings, and also because it makes you like it makes it easier for those to be the bad guys. There's also been trends in past years that I've mentioned off like recording that like as far as examples, like Russians tend to be a lot of enemies,
Duh.
Nazis, I feel like I saw quite a few in the mid 2000s, especially after 9/11. Middle Eastern Muslim enemies,
Skeletons.
skeletons.
God fucking damn it! I hate skeletons.
Like no,
Oh.
I mean,
I wish I didn't have one.
obviously it makes more sense as far like if you like think about it for 2 seconds, but like a lot of like T-rated games,
Yeah.
I feel like it tends to be aliens,
Sure.
robots, or insects, like giant insects that you fight, so it can get that teen rating. It's because you're not fighting an actual human being. Because when you want your game to do well, you want it to hit a general audience, and you don't really want to alienate necessarily
Yeah,
other
but
people.
what's interesting about video games is it doesn't work the way that movies do, right? Like R-rated movies typically perform worse, right?
Yeah.
M-rated games do not typically perform worse.
Right.
E-rated games do not typically perform worse. T-rated games
Yep.
Right.
typically perform worse.
Well,
True.
I think because and with an E-rated game, you have a good idea of what to expect. With an M-rated game, you have a good idea
Right.
of what to expect. With a T-rated game, you don't know, right? Because like I think about the original Medal of Honor on the PS1. That is a T-rated game where you were fighting Nazis. And like I think the only reason it's T-rated is because there's no blood in the game.
Yeah.
Well,
and things are a bit more laxed.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, when you think about like what kind of enemies you're putting in a game, right? Like it's always a good idea to kill Nazis.
But we discussed this earlier. It's not, right? Bionic Commando got censored. Nazis, it couldn't be Nazis. We have to make it something else.
Yeah, well, I don't think that having Nazis in the game was a bad idea. I think that they thought it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
But inherently, like who's going to argue against if you want to kill Nazis in your game? Who's going to argue with that?
I don't disagree with you, but like they censored it for a reason.
Yeah, reasons that escape
Mass
me.
appeal.
Yeah.
And even still, like, and then I think about like the think more recently about Machine Games' iteration of Wolfenstein, right? And like there was a controversy that drummed about. And I'm putting controversy in air quotes for people who are listening because
Loud minority.
well, like and the loud minority was like other Nazis. So like
I don't completely agree. The controversy I saw with the New Order, especially, or excuse me, not the New Order.
New
What's
Colossus.
the New Colossus
Yeah.
specifically? Was that Wolfenstein's always been a game about killing Nazis?
yeah,
right.
that's what you do in Wolfenstein.
But like, what was going on in the United States around that time and still
Sure.
going on now.
Right.
Charlottesville.
But what was much more apparent when that game was leading up to release, consumers made it about that.
Sure.
And once Machine Games and id realized that people were into it because of that, they then pushed forward
that
on
was,
that.
and that was another thing too. And
that
like,
was the
and
controversy.
This is a side conversation, but like I've never really had like a relevant time to bring this up, but like before like they realized that like consumers were into it, like they were basically like, well, we're not really taking a stance. Like it's just our video game.
Yeah.
Then when people were like, yeah, hell yeah, kill those
Yeah.
Nazis, and they're like, yeah, make America Nazi free again.
Yeah.
That's our new ad campaign, right? And that just always just like
Super insincere.
It just feels fake. Yeah.
yeah, that kind of disingenuous. And like, don't get me wrong, New Colossus is one of my favorite games of that year. But at the same time, like don't get it twisted. Like I recognize the fact that you use anti-Nazi rhetoric as a marketing campaign, as opposed to just a default stance
Right.
that one should take.
Right.
And like,
By the way, we are an anti-Nazi podcast. If you have a problem with that,
I think we well established that with our PewDiePie conversation. But
And others.
yeah, but like,
wait, when do we talk about PewDiePie?
we talked.
More than once.
Yeah, fuck that guy. But and it's Nazis is one of those enemies that like Nazis are one of those enemies that like it's really hard to imagine like running into any kind of real trouble with including like if your Nazi killing video game has problem, it's probably not because you're killing Nazis in that video game.
Yeah.
It's probably just maybe like the game doesn't work as it should, or it's any problem besides the fact that you're killing Nazis, right? But you also mentioned at one point like games where you're killing like Middle Easterners or
Middle Eastern Muslims.
well,
to be more specific.
and I can't really say that I've ever played a game where specifically I'm killing Muslims, but
Right.
Most of the time, they will make reference in like a background noise as like praising Allah or whatever.
I can't say that I've ever played a game that contains that, but I will say this: that is that kind of thing is a totally different problem, because if you're talking about galvanizing someone or incentivizing the killing of Middle Easterners or Muslims in your video game, then you're also kind of running into the problem of the narrative that there is a large amount of Islamophobia in the Western world.
Well, see, and I can't think of a modern video game that has done that either.
Call of Duty.
Specifically Islam.
I feel like 100% there was something about Islam in that.
So, like I said, I can't think of that, and I've played a lot of Call of Duty, especially from that era. What I will say is, like, Medal of Honor was a bigger controversy than Call of Duty was, and that's because they were specifically using Taliban.
Right.
And they didn't, but that's very similar to the whole Bionic Commando thing. And why, like you said, why is that a controversy? I don't really know.
Yeah,
but it is.
Well, I can wrap my mind around, like, if I'm putting in my video game, what enemies am I killing in my video game?
Yeah.
I can wrap my mind around why I might want to rethink, including like people of Middle Eastern descent as a primary antagonist in my video game.
Yeah, but Taliban.
Well, I think I'm not arguing that. I'm not making an argument that the Taliban is a sympathetic figure.
Sure.
What I am arguing, though, is that there are a lot of people in the place where we live that have a problem with making a distinction about that sort of thing.
Sure.
And I think that when we're talking about Nazis versus a member of Taliban, people base Nazis on the actions that they take that are obviously actions that Nazis take, whereas when people are making judgments about whether or not someone might be a member of the Taliban, it's on a surface level based on their appearance.
So let me ask you this then.
Sure.
As a black man, how do you feel about Resident Evil 5? Because that was a big controversy.
Right. So I remember I can't rightfully recall what my reaction was when Resident Evil 5 came out.
Because I have no problem with it.
But
just in the same way I have no problem with sleeping dogs.
So here's how I think of it, and this goes back to the conversation that I had about Far Cry 5. So, and I'll wrap around to Resident Evil 5 in a second. But when Far Cry 5 came out, when it was announced, it garnered criticism for being a quote white genocide simulator.
Sure. When really it was spoofing Heaven's Gate.
Right. And
I don't remember that criticism coming out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a
big thing.
Yeah. And this is criticism drawn by people who were ignoring previous games in that franchise.
I had a friend who was into every Far Cry game, who is a white man who grew up in the South. He met his first black man when he was 22.
Holy shit.
Which is bizarre to me.
Who was concerned about Far Cry 5
right.
because of this.
And so this is like that criticism is by people who either have never seen a previous Far Cry or are choosing to disregard the settings of the previous games and who you were killing in those games, because we're talking in the previous four games in that series, you're killing Pacific Islanders, you're killing East Asians.
Yep. But now it's a white man.
Yeah, you're killing people in Africa. You're killing blacks in Africa, and none of those are a problem. It wasn't an African genocide simulator. It wasn't an East Asian genocide simulator.
Right.
But the moment that the game takes place in America,
it's a problem.
It becomes a white genocide simulator. So when I think about like this game takes place in Montana, right?
Yeah.
I've never been to Montana, but I would hazard to guess that
and it's a fictional county in Montana, but yes, Montana.
I've never been to Montana, but I would hazard to guess that there are a fair amount of white people in Montana. And
it's real fucking white.
And also keep in mind, like, here's another thing too, is that when you think about the criticism that the game has drawn, that is also by people who haven't played the games. I've spent at least 10 hours with that game.
Right.
And I will say that I've killed in that game I've killed white men, I've killed white women, I've killed black men, I've killed black women, I've killed Asian men, I've killed Asian women. Right. And so
Why did Asian women get 2 fingers to count them?
Irrelevant, Sinead. But
One in the pink, one in the stink.
sure.
Fuck off.
I was shocked.
You get it?
I get it.
You know what shocker is?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately.
So now when I think of, so I think about this is a geographical thing, right?
Right.
So if my game is placed in a fictional version of Tibet, then there's probably going to be a fair amount of Tibetans in my game.
Sure.
If my game is if my game takes place in a fictional island in the Southeast Pacific, there's probably going to be a lot of Pacific Islanders in my game, right? So when we're talking about Resident Evil 5, then a game takes place in Africa. It's probably fair to assume that there are a fair amount of black people in Africa, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is inherently racist. I get where I see where people drew that conclusion because Chris Redfield is
a white guy.
He is
the
what?
whitest.
Do you think that is the reason that Sheva was black?
I think that Sheva was black definitely to offset that criticism. And I think it had little to. I think that she was specifically written in there to say, Sheva is, I think, the black friend when someone says, "I have a black friend."
Sure.
Do you think it would have been better or worse criticisms if, because Sheva in my gameplay and the cover and everything I've seen of her is, as far as the melanin side goes, pretty light.
Yeah.
I think that
if she was
a Japanese company probably worries about this a lot less than a Western company would.
And also
that.
and I've had my criticisms for how Japanese developers handle the presence of black people in the
Sure, and I will say, I'll be the first to admit, Resident Evil is very much a Western feeling Japanese game, but it is still a Japanese game.
Right.
But do you think the criticisms will? My question still stands. Do you think criticism would be worse or better if Sheva wasn't?
If Sheva were, I think the criticisms would have been worse if Sheva were Jill instead.
Okay.
But at the same time, I don't think that. Do I think that Resident Evil 5 is inherently racist? No, but I do think that. But at the same time, I see what the through line is in that line of reasoning.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't bring myself to think that because I can't on one hand say I can't on one hand be okay with any game in the Far Cry series, geographically speaking, and then suddenly not be okay with Resident Evil 5.
It's like this is good. This dates it a bit, but you guys ever watch Sway's interview with Quentin Tarantino about Django Unchained?
No.
So obviously his use of the N-word comes up because it was a big controversy around the time of that movie and all that, and Tarantino's whole thing is well, at that time in the South, in the United States, that word got thrown around more than I used it in that movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that the criticism that Tarantino garnered for his use of that word is because he makes with the exception of the Kill Bill movies and Inglourious Bastards, I've heard him use that word a lot in his writing.
Sure.
But I also think that contextually it makes sense in a movie that takes place in the American South when slavery is going on.
Sure, or even like Jackie Brown, right? Which at this point is a 17, 18-year-old movie that is still beloved.
Yeah. So, but I think that when you're thinking about the kind of enemy that you want to put in your game, then I think that you do have a certain degree of responsibility to think about what kind of real world implications that has.
Yeah.
Especially goes back to when I was talking about with if you're going to have a game where you are killing Middle Easterners, regardless of whatever affiliation that they have, you have to think about if you're releasing this game in the West, especially when we have such a huge problem with Islamophobia and issues with people being attacked,
racial profiling,
things like that. And so then you have to think about you do have a certain responsibility to think about what kind of ramifications that might have. Am I saying that you shouldn't release your game? That's your decision to make. But I am saying that if you are going to put that in your game, then you should definitely be conscious of the implications that it comes with.
Sure.
So. Yeah. And I think that due to things I would say, I'm going to keep using an example, Islamophobia, it does tend to in my opinion trend a lot in the villains we see in their stuff. Whenever their things aren't.
Can you give me a couple of games that do this?
I guess like to explain it better more is like it's like tinfoil hat theory. It seems to be like zombie games pop up more when we don't have a villain that is kind of more present in our everyday
Like
life.
when we don't have like a world crisis, and
We always have a world crisis.
or like
Yeah.
a villain that we want to point to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I've seen like more Nazi games show up in the last like couple of years, specifically since
I feel like there was more in the 90s than there are now.
Yeah. Well,
compared to like early 2000s to like mid 2000s, and
Yeah.
then the last say like 5 years.
well, I mean,
I see. We've noticed more. We have like more. As I said, tinfoil hat theory. Like,
Yeah.
and it can
Yeah.
be totally proved wrong. I feel like we see more Russian enemies, like in more games that are like a lot more popular in the last 5 years. And of course, it happened in the 90s and before that. I'm saying like say in the last 15 years.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we might
far
just be
as
playing the
trends.
different games, you know,
Yeah.
because like I can't really think of many.
You know, Metro has Russian enemies, of course.
Metro
is in Russia.
is in
though.
Russia.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
everybody is Russian in that game.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to.
Even the protagonist.
It doesn't
you
have to
know.
even be set there though.
Yeah, but like, I mean, if you're
Well, it was written by a Russian man today.
I'm just
I'm just
okay,
saying, as far as
I-
like what hits critical appeal and what
I-
more people are playing.
Well,
Yeah.
see, so I think that
Well, that's
Tinfoil has-
that's one game of many that, and I really don't feel like the argument's valid there. Like not to dismiss what you're saying.
I
You
say
know,
it's tinfoil hat theory. It's not like oh, I think this all
yeah.
the time. But if like looking at trends, it seems like we have a lot more zombies, robots, and stuff like that when we don't have like a clear like generalized.
I'll say
enemy.
this.
Yeah.
In the Western world.
So like, I think that when one of the things that you think about when you're making your game is what is going to sell. Zombies always sells. Whether people will say that they're tired of zombies, but zombie games get people's attention.
I mean, zombies always sell after the resurgence of zombies, right? After we got the Dawn remake, which say what you will about Zack Snyder, but Dawn remake
that
and
movie's
28
badass.
days later
Badass.
are the two movies that brought zombies
Yeah.
back. People
Right.
were tired of them before that.
I think that there
If you
would
think about zombie games that happened before those two movies, they didn't really sell.
there would be no
Zombies
Left
Ate
4
My
Dead without
Neighbors did
28
not
days
do
later.
well, you know.
I stand by that.
Yeah,
There would be no Left 4 Dead without 28 days later.
exactly.
Now so zombies sell, I think, but I also think that Nazis sell because, cynically speaking, you want to make sure that if you're gonna put an enemy in your game, you
people
want
want to kill them.
well, you want to be able to put an enemy. If you're gonna put somebody that you're gonna kill in your game, you want to be able to put someone that maybe you don't like, just people that you don't have any moral qualms with killing,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no gray area
Right.
with Nazis, right? Like these are Nazis.
But I don't know that necessarily means that they sell, though, because like I can think of a few games
Right.
like
But-
Wolfenstein or whatever, right? But
Right.
like when I think about other Nazi games,
Right.
other games that have Nazis in them,
Right.
they didn't do great numbers.
Right. But at the same
You know?
time, it wasn't because that the game had you killing Nazis. It was because of some other factor. Right? It wasn't because the game didn't fail because people were turned off by you killing Nazis.
No, correct, but that doesn't mean that Nazis sell, though, because
Sure.
then the inclusion of Nazis would elevate those numbers.
Sure,
you
but
know?
but at the same time, like cynically speaking, like with our current climate, with Nazism in America being highlighted in the way that it is,
Yeah.
it is absolutely a good business decision to make a game where you were killing Nazis.
Oh, sure, since the new Colossus or
Right.
whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, but we haven't
And
seen.
that's
we have not seen many since then.
and
though.
that is illustrated by Bethesda and Machine Games' stance on the matter, where they, like I said before, they took a very centrist, non-committal stance on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And most people were like, "Yeah, let's kill Nazis." And like, "Oh yeah, hey, by the way, make America Nazi free again." Like,
Right.
like, dude,
Fuck off.
I can't say fuck off, but I also paid $60 for that game anyway. So like,
And you enjoyed it.
yeah.
I mean, it's a good game, you know, and that's fine. But like, I think about other games that included Nazis, and I don't think Nazis is what sold them, you know. And then I can think of many games that included Nazis that did not sell well.
well,
you
and
know.
I think me saying that the game sold well solely because of Nazis, I think that's a reductive statement for you to make. Like,
It's not for Wolfenstein. I mean,
Well-
that's what Wolfenstein is based on, you know.
but Wolfenstein,
But it's also the legacy of the name.
Well,
Sure, at this point, yes.
yeah, but there's also like that game is also just well made.
Right.
And it would have been that Wolfenstein would have been a good shooter regardless of what you were killing in it, like mechanically speaking. You just happen to be killing Nazis, so I enjoy it more.
But like, so is the Nazi zombie trilogy, right? But
Right.
like, those were just a mode in the sniper games.
Right,
They
and
had
like so those
it didn't
so
sell
like
anything.
did killing Nazis in those games like was
Sell
that,
those games? No,
well, like
absolutely
was it a nice
not.
little bonus? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like that game would have been just as cool if I was killing something else.
And on that note, they're looked at as like B tier games. They don't
Right.
sell extremely well. They sell okay,
Right.
enough for them to make a sequel.
Well,
but-
I mean that same developer made what is it, Strange Brigade,
right,
so which
flopped.
mummies and shit.
Yeah.
Which the Nazi game sold better, so I don't know.
Well, no, because the Nazi game was just a mode in a
Sure.
game that had nothing to do with Nazis.
Sure.
You know, and by the way, they were Nazi zombies.
Sure.
But
The worst kind.
yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I really feel like these trends in antagonists that you're talking about, I really saw much more in the '90s
Yeah.
than I do today.
Well, like
So, explain what you mean by that.
because like
Just so because I don't know.
75% of video games were 2D platformers, you know?
Yeah.
And like if you think about like the big ones, right? Think about Sonic, you think about Mario, and whoever else happened to be there, right? Donkey Kong Country.
Crash.
And the enemy's always just like this big fucking buffoon, right? I mean, yeah, you know, Bowser's a big fucking lizard turtle and Robotnik's a fat Eggman, but like they're basically the same fucking thing.
Right.
You know, you could even throw Wily in there, even though I do feel like as far as 8-bit games go, the Mega Man series has more of an in-depth story
Right.
than a lot of those games. None of them really had much of a story, you know. It's just some big dumb idiot for you to kill.
Yeah.
You know, whereas now I do feel like there's a divergence now, and I don't see most of these trends you're talking about now. And maybe I'm blind to it. Maybe we're not playing the same games, you know. But I don't see that.
Yeah.
As far as enemy specific trends, you
Right.
know, I see other trends clearly, but yeah,
And I think that a lot of games that are, because I think that there are times when someone will put a certain kind of enemy.
look at these. These are all three enemies, right?
Yeah.
All three.
I mean, Sagada's from Thailand.
These are very similar, right?
Thailand, Hell,
Yeah,
Mushroom Kingdom,
it's all the same.
Brooklyn.
So,
You know,
yeah, like,
granted, these are very old games, right? But
Also,
you
like,
know.
so, you know, there. I think about the games that I've played in the past few years.
Yeah,
I will say that the three things that I've killed in video games in the past few years are Nazis,
robots,
robots.
zombies.
No, I haven't really played a lot of zombie games.
They may
I mean,
call
we
them
played
by
Killing
like
Floor for
they
quite a
may
while.
they may
Yeah, but
call
I mean,
them
those
another
weren't zombies
name,
though.
okay.
but like they're zombies.
If you called the freakers zombies, then these are absolutely zombies.
No, you called them zombies. I called them freakers.
All right.
So-
Look, either way, like
It's just I don't see the trend, honestly.
I mean, the trends I do see have nothing to do with like a specific group, but like in a writing style, I see
Sure.
trends. You know, if you think about like one of my favorite villains this generation, which I don't think gets enough appreciation because the writing in the rest of the game wasn't that good, was Augustine from
Right.
Infamous Second Son.
Great villain, by the way.
There's a lot of villains like that though
Yeah.
nowadays. You know,
Like the sympathetic villain who,
right?
Yeah,
I see trends in that way,
Right.
you know. But as far as like a certain group
I
or
mean,
a certain
sympathetic villain is still a trend. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, no, I still it's
like
definitely
that's
a trend.
the trend I see in recent years.
yeah.
Well, the sympathetic villain is, in my opinion, the best kind of villain. But like,
Not necessarily. Depends on the game.
That's true.
yeah, maybe
That's true.
But you know, honestly, like when in a lot of games where I see like that I've played where they're trying to make some kind of point, the antagonist or the enemy is really more ambiguous, and it's never really pointed to a certain kind of person or a specific kind of force that you're against. So I mean, I'm not, and again, I'm not saying that these games aren't out there. I think that these aren't the kind of narratives in which I'm being engaged, though.
Yeah.
And there are just so many, but there are so many games out there that it is completely possible for all of these, like for everything that you're saying to be true, Shanae, and for me to just completely miss it. Only because of like these are just not the kind of things that I'm engaging in.
Yeah, and then there's other things, right? Like you think about BioShock Infinite, like you could point to like you could say Comstock's the villain or whatever, but is Comstock really the villain of that game?
Yeah.
Does BioShock Infinite even really have a villain?
Right.
You know.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, there's bad people in that game.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but like, does it have a main antagonist? Because if it does, it would be Comstock, and I don't know that you can really say that.
Well, I think that like depending on how you look at it, any one person is the antagonist.
Right. So like, you see that a bit more, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't even mean like
Rogue AI, but like even that, I can't call it a trend because the ones I can think of that are of any note have been spread across the 15 years.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
I was just thinking about how much how cyclical zombie and robot or robot enemies really are, and what do we see as far as like a trend that differentiates outside of that?
Yeah.
Like I didn't think about it, but y'all are right. Like I didn't think about like sympathetic enemies being the trend right now.
Yeah, and that's the only one I can really see. Like zombies, even like yes, zombies are popular, but like COD Zombies was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was all like
10 years like
ago
it's
now.
not a recent thing.
Yeah.
It's something that's persisted.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just like opinions as far as like trends go.
I think that zombies will I think that they'll fall out of favor, but then they will always come back.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's the easiest way to have human-like enemies without them being human.
Well, yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
well
true.
because I think that they're like you'll hear it all the time. Like you'll go on you go on in like message boards that like have to do with like video games or comic books or anything along those lines. And there's somebody who is fantasizing about a zombie apocalypse, which, by the way, you want to watch out for that guy because he's just looking for an excuse to kill people. But
but you have a point, right? And it's true. And you're not the first person to bring it up, right?
Oh, no.
But like you think about other like ghoulies, right? Like vampires. Typically, you're playing the vampire.
Yeah.
Well,
because I think people are done with killing vampires.
Right.
Like
so.
Yeah, I mean they're cool. They're immortal.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to be immortal.
But like, there's other monsters outside of zombies.
Nobody's doing mummies. No one's doing
Mummy remastered.
Demastered.
Yeah, and also
Mummy demastered.
no one's doing that Black Lagoon monster kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Swamp Thing.
Those are always a singular figure, though. You can have one enemy in your game.
I don't know. There's a lot of them in Castlevania 1, but
no, those are mermen.
they look the same.
Merman.
They are not the same.
They look
Mr.
the
Merman.
same. My name is Irving Merman.
Thurman Merman.
But I mean, all trends are cyclical, right? And I think that zombies aren't. I don't think that they're in a lull right now because we've got a bunch of games that are coming out with either zombies or something that is zombie adjacent in the very near future. And I think that. So I think about X-Files, right, and how that was a very like a monster of the week kind of show, and then I think that video games can also sort of adopt that same thing, like what is the monster right now, and let it like
very rarely is it werewolves.
Well, I'm not saying
There's
like
the Order 1886.
I'm not saying like literal like monsters, like not necessarily like universal monsters or whatever, but like monster in a more figurative sense.
Yeah, I just don't really see it. Like I said, outside of a sympathetic antagonist, I don't really see it.
Yeah.
Maybe not in recent years. I guess like overall though.
Yeah. Like I said, in the 90s, I saw it a lot. Right. Like think about like every beat 'em up from the 90s that was on the SNES.
Sure.
And the bad guy you're beating up at the end of it was always like some power hungry asshole. Nothing. No, never went any deeper than that.
But
Ransom, yeah,
I'm slick. The slickest of the slick.
Yeah, but like
also the first Streets of Rage said police will never help you, only trust your fists.
Sure. Even though they were in fact police.
They were former police. They were disillusioned and they left the force to pursue justice on their own terms. Which, by the way,
vigilantes.
Well, like I said before last episode, justice and the law aren't always the same thing.
Sure.
So.
I do have a non-points based game.
Well,
Today?
we need points. That's how.
No. You don't.
Is it because you lost the scoreboard? You don't know who's ahead anymore.
Scoreboard's right here.
The scoreboard's right there. I have like the points in a little.
Why is your
notebook.
flashlight on?
I accidentally pressed the button.
Sure.
So, this is just no explanation.
Okay.
I'm gonna say a genre,
All right.
and I'm gonna say like the first game in that genre that pops in your mind.
How is this a game?
Because I'm just picking your brain.
Okay. It's more of a study, but let's go ahead.
Okay. Oh my god.
It's an exercise.
Sinead, this is called word association. You know what that is?
I hate you guys so much sometimes.
Sinead, this is. Never mind. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Ready.
My brain needs
I'm
to
ready. I'm
reboot.
excited.
Let's go.
First person shooter.
Doom.
Yeah.
MMORPG.
World of Warcraft.
EverQuest.
Roguelike.
Spelunky.
I was actually gonna say Rogue.
Dungeon crawler.
Diablo.
Racing simulator.
Grid.
Racing simulator. Forza, I guess.
Open world RPG.
Nier Automata.
Skyrim.
Let's think here.
You don't have them written
action.
down?
No, I don't.
Oh.
Action adventure RPG.
Nier Automata.
Wait, if you don't have them written down, why'd you open your phone?
Because I thought not the point.
Okay.
Not the point right now.
Okay.
I've been drinking.
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, me too, but
Yeah, but I was
We're
drinking.
getting a little saucy. Save continue late night.
I was drinking before.
Yeah.
Is this
Save continue after dark.
is this phone boning?
no,
No,
it's
but
not.
we could do that with this new fangled thing.
I mean, we could phone bone someone.
I don't want to do.
Let's
that.
phone bone Sandy.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah. Okay.
Third person shooter.
Gears of War.
Same.
Point and click.
Grim Fandango.
I don't know. I don't play those.
Visual novel.
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright.
Last one. Super vague because I'm not good at these. Sports game.
NHL.
NBA Jam.
Right. So
What did you learn from this?
nothing.
Okay.
I actually do rather enjoy word association. I love that activity actually.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what y'all's like first
But
game.
usually when you do word association, you're supposed to be writing it down because you're supposed to be forming some opinions about like our psychological state.
Well, the thing is, this is recorded, so I can just listen to it whenever.
That's true.
You can't listen to it until I decide you can listen to it.
Oh, it's also true.
Facts. So yeah, if you have an idea about like trends as far as enemies that we didn't mention, let us know. So this has been the Save Continue podcast.
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in this. Let me know if you think I'm wrong and if you can tell me an antagonist trend that has been going on in video games recently. Give me examples of games in which that is the case.
I will caution you. I have known Tom for 20 years and I have never successfully proved him wrong. So good luck.
Just give me an example in which that is the case.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
feel like we can pull up episodes where you have proved them wrong.
There, absolutely.
I don't think so.
But yeah.
Cite your sources.
I'm Shanae. This is Tommy. This
Goodbye.
is Ryan.
See you later.
Bye, guys.